Okay, good evening. Welcome. It being 6 p.m, I'll declare the ordinary meeting of council open. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on, the Nala, Kala, Burja and Southwest Bujara people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to members of all communities and cultures and their elders past, present and emerging. Tonight you'll see beside me Mr. Gordon McMile, our new CEO, so I welcome him to the council and to the chair. He's hit the ground running, having started last week and already pretty much across everything, so which is quite impressive. So welcome, Mr. McMile. Record of attendance, apologies, leave of absence. I don't think we have any. And response to previous questions taken on notice, there are none. So we move to public question time, and I believe we have some questions from Mr. Brian Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. President. On several occasions during the past 6 months, and as recently as May 2021, I reported that following the resealing of Hardy Terrace car park in Peppermint Grove Beach, a significant washaway has occurred at the southern end of the car park through the sand dunes and onto the beach. The washaway is approximately 3 metres deep, 4 metres in width and 10 to 15 metres in length. I appreciate the staff undertook some short-term remedial work and have since acknowledged to me that those works failed. I was advised by phone in June 21 that potentially, and I'll put that in inverted commas, major remedial work would be required and that funds were not available in the 2021 budget and a provision would need to be made in the 21-22 budget. My question is, what provision has been made in the 21-22 budget and what is the estimated cost of repairing the damage to our fragile coast dunes? If I could just add, there was a truck down there today that removed about 1.5 truckloads of sand from the southern end of sand actually on the car park. And I guess the volume of the washaway I worked out at somewhere between 120 and 180 cubic metres. So.
Mr. Hearn, thank you for giving us some notice of the questions. So I'll ask the new CEO to deal with your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Shire President. Thank you for the question. Our operations and technical services team are investigating more long-term options for the Hardy Terrace car park and to improve drainage. These investigations will be conducted as quickly as we can. Once the options have been identified and costed, a budget allocation proposal will come to Council.
So I guess the question is there any money in this year's budget?
Through you, Shire President, not at this point in time because the potential solutions haven't been identified completely and costed. As I said, once they are, a report will come to Council.
Thank you. The second question, 13 contaminated sites were recently listed in the Shire's financial report as a contingent liability with the risk that actual future dollar costs may need to be recorded as a liability. Following a council decision in 2019, it would appear that a quarantine restricted reserve of $100,000 was established to meet future liabilities. If I'm correct in reading this year's budget, it's pleasing to note that in this year's draft budget, the reserve provision is being increased to $200,751. My question is, what work was undertaken on the 13 contaminated sites during 2021 financial year, and what works and what dollar provision have been identified for work to be carried out on the 13 contaminated sites during the 21-22 financial year? And has the Shire identified a future cost to remediate the 13 contaminated sites?
Through you, Shire President, and thank you, Mr. Hearn, for providing your questions in advance to enable us to give a more complete answer as well. And I'll read it if I can. The 21-22 annual budget does reflect an increase in contaminated sites reserve balance to fund the future remediation works of contaminated sites. The 13 sites listed within the Shire's financial report are now included in the Shire's contaminated sites register, and a process is underway on the completion of detailed site investigation for each site. In the interest of risk mitigation, the sites have been allocated a risk level based upon the site's location, public access and the like. Of the 13 sites, 4 have been deemed as high risk, being areas where staff and public access. These 4 sites have completed a detailed site assessment reports, and Shire officers are currently awaiting feedback from the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation regarding the report's findings and recommended treatments. The process is now underway for the remaining 9 sites, with a tender in progress to appoint a contractor to complete the detailed site investigations. Once all the sites have detailed site investigations completed, and DWA have considered the findings, including remedial works recommended, the Shire will be in a more informed position to realise the future financial liability, identify a program of works and present this to Council for review. A detailed site investigation at the depot was conducted in 2020-21 financial year. We're still awaiting feedback from DWA regarding the report findings and recommended treatments.
Thank you, sir. And let me extend a welcome as well.
Thank you.
I believe we have some questions also from Mrs. Hearn. Is that right?
He probably has too many questions from me. My question is about coastal hazard reduction, and I'm happy to note that since I sent it in on Monday, in the required time, announcement's been made by Rita Safiotti that the government's adding 16 million to the pool of money that councils will be able to apply for over the next few years if they're ready to partner with the state government in the reduction of coastal hazards in clearly identified hotspots. So I think that makes it all the more important to commend and note the timeliness of the work of Shire officers and our Climate Change Committee in bringing forward for council approval both recently the Shire Climate Change Declaration and tonight identifying the environmental priority within our Shire's strategic community plan, namely the completing of the CHIR map, which is the Coastal Hazard Risk Management and Adaptation Plan. And I think the first of 7 stages of that begin next week. I also note that in the 2021 budget, 35,000 was provided for participation with the Perrin Naturalist Peninsula Group to undertake preliminary surveys of the Capel coastal zone in partnership with our bordering local government authorities and the relevant government authorities. So my question is in regard to the steps now being taken in our Shire's financial readiness to action our CHIR map, which will hopefully be completed ready for action as soon as mid-next year, especially since the impacts of climate change aren't waiting for our plan. First, 1A, so nearby local government jurisdictions have been committing 1% of their rates revenue to climate adaptation reserve for some years. Has the Shire of Capel established or considered the establishment of such a reserve fund? And if so, what's the dollar amount in it that has been allocated? And if not, are there any other unearmarked reserve funds that could be made available for the purposes?
Mrs. Hearn, you can rest assured that the council is on top of these issues. We, as a matter of fact, had a briefing about it this afternoon before this meeting. I'll ask the CEO to provide a answer to your question.
Through you, Shire President, thank you, Mrs. Hearn, for advance notice on the questions as well. The Shire are aware of the future financial commitment required from the Shire to mitigate the possible risks which may be identified through the preparation of the CHIR map. Currently, the Shire's annual budget does not quarantine a portion of rate revenue into a specific reserve, for this project. However, this method of investment for future projects is an effective way of allocating funds. The Shire operates a land conservation activities reserve, which currently projects a small balance, and the scope of this reserve could be broadened with council approval to incorporate the allocation of funds specifically designed to support an agreed program of works associated with the outcome of the CHRMAP process. Please be assured that Shire officers are very conscious of the possible financial ramifications this could impose on the Shire, and will continue to work with council and Shire's lead officers on the CHRMAP project. And as the Shire President mentioned, there was a briefing provided earlier this afternoon to ensure sufficient funds are allocated to support the council's direction.
Thank you. Delighted to hear all of that. And so probably your answer covers my other two parts of the question. Anecdotal evidence suggests that CHRMAP plans can cost in the order of $100,000 to prepare. So my question was, has the Shire allocated funds in the operating budget this year for completion of that map? And so the answer to that is operating budget.
Thank you, through you, Shire President. The council has an allocated budget of $35,000 in 2021, which is contributed to, I guess, the coordinated project being headed by the Parent Naturalist Partnership, which obviously also involves the City of Bunbury, the Shires of Dardanup, Harvey, DBCA and Southern Ports, with assistance from other government agencies. There's an allocation in this financial year to the CHRMAP process, and that's obviously being led by the Parent Naturalist Partnership.
So that was 2021
Correct.
and 21-22.
There's not currently an allocation
Right, okay.
until we see the outcome of the CHRMAP process.
All right. Then maybe it's the same answer to my next question. So bearing in mind the local government's responsibility to manage the risks and impacts on the public infrastructure and assets that the local government owns and manages, has the council yet taken steps to identify which of those assets will be impacted across the CHRMAP area, where if you look at the initial map there, the study area appears to be the stretch of our coastline from Daliel up to Forest Beach, and then inland from the shoreline to Bustle Highway. So is that still in preparation?
Through you, Shire President, as you know, the CHRMAP process extends to the southern boundary of the Shire.
Right. So the assessment of the infrastructure that the local government will be responsible for will be part of this year's planning process.
Yeah, through you, Shire President, yes, it'll be part of the CHRMAP
Great.
process.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cern. I believe we also have a question from Mr. Jeff McDougall.
Good evening, councillors. I wish to raise the topic on the zero rate increase. As a ratepayer in the Shire of Capel, I'm asking the councillors who voted for a zero rate increase to reconsider your decision. At a zero rate increase, the Shire cannot grow, it cannot fund future projects. It will leave a huge problem.
Excuse me, Mr. McDougall.
If you get my name right, it'd be really good.
Okay, Mr. McDougall, I believe.
Yep.
Right. This is not the time for you to come here and make statements. It's a question time. It's called.
It is questions. Questions at the end here.
Can you get to your question? Because at the moment you're giving us a lecture.
If you stop interrupting me, I'll be able to get there.
Okay, so move to your question.
The question is, why has the council voted for a zero rate increase, and why shouldn't you not increase the rates by at least 3%?
Okay, so the answer to that question is, it's part of the process that local governments go through, is that we come up with a draft of our rate decision, and then that goes to public comment. So we put that out to public comment. We received 17 submissions. We didn't receive a submission from you, Mr. McDougall. Of the 17 submissions, 17 of them said we should not be increasing the rates at this time. I read those submissions carefully. I took them on board, and I'm sure all the other councillors did too. And so that's the answer to your question. We responded to the community. We responded to the feedback we received. We followed the process that we're supposed to follow, and we did it very well and very responsibly. And I'm proud of the decision that we made, and the decision has been made. So you coming along tonight is you're about 3 weeks late. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Okay, I think all
Good
you've
night.
done, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
President,
you.
you've
We don't
left
need
the-
another lecture. Thank you.
No, you've left the Shire with a
Can you
huge time
please
bomb.
resume your seat?
No, I'm staying here. If you want to kick me
Resume
out,
your
go.
seat, please. You're being disorderly.
You're disorderly.
Are there any applications for leave of absence? Councillor Andrew. For September, that's noted. I have one declaration of interest from proximity interest from Councillor Mogg on item 13.3. We have no notices of items to be discussed behind closed doors. I move to confirmation of minutes for the ordinary council meeting of 28th of July 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clues, seconded Councillor Andrew. Is there any discussion? We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Then we have the minutes of the special council meeting of... sorry, I got thrown there because it said ordinary. Special council meeting of the 11th of August 2021. A mover? Councillor Andrew, seconded Councillor Clues. Anyone else? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Now, announcements by a presiding person, which is myself. Firstly, we have a response from the Minister, the Minister for Transport and Planning and Ports. You'll remember that pursuant to a motion that was carried here recently, we provided advice to the state government, various people within the state government, including the Minister for Transport, Planning and Ports, of the suggestion that the Bunbury Outer Ring Road, rather than destroying the Jalora corridor, could follow the route of the planned road linking the Bunbury Outer Ring Road to Bustle Highway along the road that's suggested for... Somebody quickly give me the name of that road. Centenary Road past the prison. So, this is the response from the Minister for Planning. Bunbury Outer Ring Road. This is the Honourable Rita Safiotti, MLA. I refer to your letter dated 20 July 2021 providing notice of the Shire of Capel's decision to present an alternative proposal for the southern section of Bunbury Outer Ring Road. I note that the Shire has also approached Main Roads regarding this matter. The alternative proposal is noted and considered unsuitable for fulfilling the project's objectives and ultimate planning requirements. As such, I can confirm that the project will progress on the original southern section route as reserved in the Greater Bunbury Regional Scheme, subject to finalisation of state and Commonwealth environmental approvals. Yours sincerely. So that's that one. We have another announcement, which is we have received last week, the CEO and myself travelled to the Walga Zone meeting in Collie, and Walga has presented us, and this probably should be presented to our climate change chairman, Councillor Kitchen. I'll present it to you, but eventually it'll find its way onto a prominent wall around here somewhere. But it's that's what it looks like, and it's called the West Australian Local Government Declaration on Climate Change. And this declaration was made by the Shire of Capel on the 6th of July 2021. It recognises the significance of climate change and the Shire's commitment to address it and its impacts. I won't read it all out, but it's along the lines of what we passed, the resolution we passed. And so well done to the committee and well done to the council. Do you want to say a few words? No, you're right. Okay. So we move to petitions, presentations, and we do have one presentation this evening from Mr. Matthew Yan, a hydrologist, on behalf of the item 14.3, the application for a quarry.
Thank you, Shire President. First of all, I'm making an apology for Matthew Yan, who is one of my employees. So I hope you'll hear me instead.
Just state your name for the record.
Yes.
Thanks.
So my name is Jim Davies, and I'm the owner and director of JDA Consultant Hydrologists. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. This is regarding the item on page 42 of the agenda this evening for lot 230, number 550, Elgin Road, Elgin, and in particular the manner in which my company has calculated the groundwater levels and the maximum groundwater levels. So I presume this is something the councillors wish to hear about.
Yes, we are across the issues.
Oh,
we've
you're
had
good. Thank you.
it's been to council once already, and we have
Okay.
had another presentation on it. So we are fully abreast of the issues, and you
Okay.
can forge on.
Okay, thank you. Well, maybe I'll just say by way of introduction, I am based in Subiaco, but I've been working in the Shire of Capel for probably 30 years since I set up my business. I've been continuously involved with the Dalyellop subdivision within the Shire, including groundwater monitoring since about 1998. So last winter, to come specifically to this application before council, last winter my company installed 4 groundwater monitoring bores, and we measured the peak groundwater level in September 2020. That was the peak for the year. And as you know, the situation of this proposed extraction is in a paddock which is generally quite wet, as is most of Capel. The soils generally get waterlogged in winter. And with that peak groundwater level last year, which was slightly below the groundwater level, I made a correction based on long-term Department of Water monitoring bores, and I added on 0.3 metres to estimate the maximum recorded since about 1980, which is the length of the DEWA records. So that's really on the flat land, but of course this extraction proposal is actually on a sand dune which is elevated, and the groundwater beneath the sand dune does not come up to the top of the sand dune. So this winter, as we probably all know, has been a bit wetter than last year, and the groundwater levels as measured so far, they are already 0.15, 6 inches in the old money, higher than the maximum last year. And that was earlier this month. So last year they peaked in September, and I expect it to peak in September this year. So they're still lower than what we estimated the maximum to be. So we estimate the maximum to be 0.15 metres higher than it was in August this year. And it will be at ground level in 3 of the 4 bores, which surround the sand dune. So it can't come up any higher. It will be at the ground surface. The ground is not in a depression, it slopes, so any surface water will run off. So the groundwater level cannot get any higher than the ground surface. So in conclusion, my calculation is that the maximum which I estimated in my November report last year, I believe that is still valid, and I don't believe there's any need for ongoing monitoring in future wetter or drier years, because we have made a correction based on the long term already. So the methods I've used are standard, and we probably adopt these for about 100 projects in the southwest of WA every year. May I just say that regarding the separation to a groundwater level, I understand the Shire has a policy requiring 2 metres separation for extractive industry from the maximum groundwater level, and other local authorities have different criteria depending on what the future land use is. So most of my work is for urban development, where the accepted separation is 1 metre for most local authorities. And it's interesting, Mr. President, that you referred to the Declaration on Climate Change. We do have a drying climate in the southwest of Western Australia, and we have had since about the mid-70s. And the latest IPCC report, released in August this year, confirms that rainfall is going to continue to decline in southwest WA. Not everywhere in the world, not everywhere in Australia, but specifically where we are, southwest WA. So if anything, groundwater levels are likely to decline in the future. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
We can't do questions now, I'm afraid, but unless there's something particularly pressing. But thank you for that. I think we all understand the issues, and
Okay.
we appreciate your presentation.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So we'll just go back to the leave of absence requested by Councillor Andrew. That needs to be put to the vote to accept that request. So I'll put it to the vote. Do we need a seconder? Councillor Noonan. And those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Sorry about that. We now move to... I've got the wrong one there, but we now move to motions of which previous notice has been given. And I'm moving a motion that 1, the Council undertakes a review of the organisational structure of the Shire of Capel. 2, this review is to be undertaken in parallel to the corporate business plan development and finalisation, or as otherwise authorised by the Council. 3, the review will be undertaken by councillors with the advice of the CEO. 4, the CEO will circulate prior to August 30 all records relating to the Shire of Capel's organisational structure, including written contracts and relevant policies. Where are we? That's the motion I'm moving. You'll have a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Thank you. As I've put down here, the reasons which are published in the agenda, this is, I don't think it's a very, it's at all contentious. This is something that councils are required to do from time to time. I think from memory there's a requirement to do it at least every couple of years. And it hasn't been done here for, I think, more than that. So it's about time we did the review of our organisational structure, make sure it's appropriate still. And I thought it was timely to move it now with a new CEO to give him a clear direction of what Council feels is the appropriate structure for the organisation which he is going to administer. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd concur that it is good for organisations to periodically have reviews, to look at their structures, look at best practice, and to always aim for that. And that this is indeed a good time, given that we've just finished the process of preparing our strategic plan. I note that there is a similar motion should this one fail to pass, so I believe the concept, the idea of having a strategic review, having a organisational review is a sound one. So thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else for or wanting to speak for or against? If not, we'll put up Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess we're in an awkward position where we have 2 motions with similar intent on the table in one evening. And in my personal opinion, I urge councillors to consider allowing this motion to fail so that we can endorse, or I believe we should endorse item 13.2, which has been presented to us by the CEO. It's my understanding and an interpretation that the responsibility of employment and management and directions of employees is obviously the responsibility of the CEO. I have previously stated when this motion's come to council that obviously I've held off on that for the basis that I would like to see us have a permanent CEO before that process goes ahead. I'm very supportive of of this process beginning. However, I do think that the report that's been presented by the CEO obviously is quite thorough. I think that responsibility within the Act under Part 5 obviously means that it's the responsibility of the CEO. The CEO has, in their very first week and a bit with this council, worked hard on putting together this report. And obviously, I think there are some issues as well around this particular motion, particularly around the contracts and the accessibility of contracts for employees for Shire staff. I know that we are obviously entitled to documents that are related to our business as councillors, but the actual restructure itself and the employment of staff is not the business of council. We only employ one staff member, and that is the CEO, of which we are all privy to the contract in which that employee is employed under. So with that particular component of the motion, I do think that item 13.2, though it ultimately achieves the same outcome of a structural review, I believe the intent is better and far more thorough, and so I would obviously urge councillors to vote against this particular motion, so that we can deal with the actual issue of restructure when it comes up in item 13.2.
Anyone else for or against? Okay, I'll just respond. Councillor Sciano says that quite rightly that the employment, management and direction of the staff at the Shire is the responsibility of the CEO, and that's absolutely correct. But it's a misapprehension to think or to say or to suggest that my motion in front of us takes on any of that responsibility. All it talks about is confirming a structure, an employment structure, the structure for the Shire. So, in other words, what jobs we have and how many of them and who answers to who. That's all it is. And then it's over to the CEO in terms of employing people to fill those positions, managing them, and giving them direction. So it's not trying to take on anything that the council is trying to take on anything it's not supposed to do. Then Councillor Sciano said he repeated this, it's quite a furphy that goes around, we only employ one staff member, and that's the CEO. That's incorrect. That's a total misapprehension of the Local Government Act. We do employ the CEO, but you'll see if you read the Act that it says clearly that the Shire Council is the employer of everybody that works for the Shire. We are the employer, even though the CEO, again the same Act says that the CEO shall employ those people, manage them, give them direction, as you rightly said, but the employer is the Shire of Capel, and the council is responsible for administering the affairs of the Shire of Capel. It's all very plainly spelled out in the Act. So I'm not doing anything untoward, not suggesting we do anything untoward or anything that isn't envisaged by the Act. And I've put all, in my background reasons here, I've given you all the references to all the sections of the Act, and hopefully you've read them all yourself. Councillor Sciano, you probably have to go and reread them from what you've said. Because you're under a misapprehension about what it says. So there's nothing scary here. This is all that's happening here is that I am suggesting that this council should carry out one of its roles, and it should do so in consultation, as I've said, with the CEO. And any other way of doing it would be handing over a responsibility that is the responsibility of the council. Anyway, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's lost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lost 6-2. With only myself and Councillor Noonan voting for. So now move to the next item, which is 13.2, finalisation. What, sorry? Oh, my pages are out of whack. 13.1, the strategic community plan. We're both out of whack. Thank you, councillors. It's a notice of motion from Councillor Noonan. It's number 11.1, 11.2. Councillor Noonan. I've given Councillor Noonan the call,
Yep.
despite what it might say on our paperwork.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move this motion that the council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to prepare and send a letter with the attached report, which we have in our amendment, our attachments, on behalf of the council to the following recipients. The quarantining of the basalt resources by the Bunbury Outer Ring Road southern route. To Infrastructure Australia and Infrastructure Western Australia, to the State and Federal Ombudsman, to the West Australian Premier and Cabinet Ministers, to the West Australian Opposition Leader and Shadow Ministers, to the Mayors and Councillors of the cities of Bunbury and Bustleton, and to the Perrin Naturalist Partnership. The reasons, well, that's the motion. Do you want me to continue with the reasons?
We'll seek a seconder. Councillor Clues. Thank you. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As the two of our questions today from our residents who came along, Mr. and Mrs. Hearn, went to the issue of coastal erosion that has been occurring and that is predicted to occur in over the next 80 years in far greater proportion, to the point where government reports, state and federal government reports, predict that 30,000 residents and businesses between Rockingham, Bunbury and Bustleton along that coast, so 30,000 businesses and residents will be at risk of inundation by the end of this century. So within certainly Councillor Ciano's lifetime. I think it's as Mr. and Mrs. Hearn quite rightly pointed out, it's beholden on us as councillors to prepare for the future, to have a mind for the future generations, and as part of that, preparing for coastal mitigation, we need to quarantine the essential resources needed to build coastal mitigation structures such as seawalls and the like. In the presentation that we had earlier today from one of the Shire officers on the CHIR maps, the Coastal Hazard Reduction Mitigation Action Plan, the point was made that Bustleton has over 40 such seawalls at varying different levels of size and construction. At present we don't have any, but we need to we need to be mindful that the resource, the over 13 million tonnes of basalt that is scheduled to be buried beneath the Bunbury Outer Ring Road, is the major resource for building those seawalls, whether they're built with raw rock or whether they're built as concrete structures. Okay, the basalt being, the blue metal being the primary ingredient for making concrete. So I think this is a very important letter that we can send. I think it's entirely based on state and federal and some local government officers' reports. So it's not something that we're making, on behalf of any particular group. It's entirely based on well-researched data which has been researched by government officers, and I think that it's important that we bring that to the government's attention and to the attention of those people on that list. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councillor Clues? No? Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'll be speaking against the motion, and while I agree the basalt is a very important resource to the region and to the local government, the attached report outlines 5 other routes that the proposed bore could take, and on all those routes underneath them is titanium zircon or sand resources, which are all identified in the Greater Bunbury Region scheme as basic raw materials that need to be preserved and not sterilised. But the only one that's actually identified as a strategic mineral resource is the titanium zircon, which the route that is proposed and endorsed by this council to go down Railway Road would sterilise a significant amount of. So I do support asking the questions, well, what is going to happen to this basalt, this resource? And I have supported those motions in the past where we've written to ministers and said, this stuff is there, what is going to happen about it? But considering this is attaching a report to say, well, here's a few other routes which are just going to sterilise a resource in another area, I can't support it because it goes against Objective 4 of the Greater Bunbury Region scheme, which is to ensure that those things aren't sterilised in the same manner. So it's not really achieving what I think the intention is, which is to say, well, what is actually going on with this resource underneath this road? So for that reason, it should not be supported because it is just impacting a resource somewhere else. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Clues.
Thank you. I changed my mind. Thank you, Councillor Kitchen. You've raised a very good point. Obviously, it wouldn't make any sense to just move a problem down the road. But that said, our preferred route that we've made clear is Centenary Road, a road that's already planned to go in anyway as part of the current preferred route for the bore. This would actually not be moving anything, it would be taking away half of what is already planned. We're trying to take away the preferred route and leave it down a section that's already planned to go in anyway. So we're halving, through this suggestion, halving the amount that will be locking in. So I think actually that your argument was actually for the motion to me, because you're right. I wasn't sure which way to go, but I think for sure we're much better off quarantining less material and saving more, particularly basalt that's going to be a major issue for climate change.
Anybody else? I'd like to say, yes, I agree. Councillor Clues makes a very good point. The thing that people need to understand about, and it hasn't been got across, about our suggestion of the Centenary Road option, the middle section of the bore, which already exists, leads you straight towards Centenary Road, the first part of which is already there. The bore plans, the current plans for the bore, show a new major linking road from Bustle Highway onto this middle section of the bore, down Centenary Road. So if it goes ahead, that will be built, and whatever's under there will be quarantined. When you think about it, our suggestion, which the minister doesn't like, all that is needed for it to happen is for one extra lane each way to be added to that Centenary Road on-ramp, it's called, I think, at the moment. So one extra lane either way, and you've done the job. The Bunbury Outer Ring Road has got people around Bunbury, and where's it taking them? Back onto Bustle Highway. Where does the Centenary Road route take them? Back onto Bustle Highway. Just a little bit further north, and you've saved Jullor up and saved those trees you've been talking about, and the basalt, etc., etc., etc. So I think because we're close to it and we've been through all these issues, more I think than perhaps the average member of Parliament sitting up in Perth, to us it's almost a no-brainer. So I'm supporting the motion. Councillor Noonan, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I think it's important to acknowledge that, yes, indeed, the titanium is an important resource. It's a strategic resource. However, it's also important to acknowledge that the two different mining processes are completely different. The titanium resource, the mineral sands, typically are within they're sands, and they're within the first 6 metres of the surface. It's strip sand mining, so you take off the overburden, you process the sand, take out the rutile, the zircon, the ilmenite, all of the minerals that you want, and you put the sand back. Okay, and then that can then be returned to pasture, as has happened. You can grow tuart forests back on it, as has happened. You can put a road back over it. You can put a railway back over it. So, and in fact, you make a good point, Councillor Kitchen, that there is a resource under Railway Road. Railway Road was built over the top of that resource, so in the process down the track, if they were so keen, they could replicate Railway Road, mine the sand next to it, build a road over it, then take Railway Road away and do the same process there if they were so keen to get that resource. The basalt is completely different. It's completely different. Okay, it's from a volcanic flow, so it's in a contained area. It's sort of football oval shaped. It's been there for 130 million years. You would, and it's 20 to 30 metres deep of solid basalt. So it's not as though you take the basalt out and then you've got, you know, something else to put back in there to fill in that gap. In fact, what would you fill the gap up with? You'd have to fill it up with more sand than Capel has got in the Shire to fill that hole in. You know, over 3 kilometres by 30 metres by
Councillor
width of the
Noonan, I
road.
just have to remind you that in your summing up, you're supposed to confine your remarks to the debate that's been
The
had,
points that
rather,
have been
and you're sort of going off-piste a little.
Yeah, correct. So thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, so it's a completely different mining process, and certainly the route that we have suggested doesn't negate the possibility of mining titanium or the mineral resources that are there, whereas the opposite, the basalt, is not able to be mined and also have the route go through where it's proposed by the government. So I would urge councillors to support the motion.
Thank you. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 6-2. Councillor Kitchen, Councillor Scott against. Thank you. Okay, so unless I'm very much mistaken, we move to questions of which previous notice has been given. I don't think we have any, right? And so we can then move to Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1, the Strategic Community Plan 2021-2031. Do we have a mover? Councillor Clues, seconded Councillor Sciano. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, this is probably the proudest thing I've been part of and got to see come to council in my time here. This document is the one that gives the Shire the direction from the community that the community want the Shire to go in. That was a tie-up. So it was imperative that we did a great job of getting feedback for this document, asking the questions, doing the surveys. What do people actually want from their Shire? And I think always we could do better, but I think we did a pretty cracking job and got a lot of feedback. And when I see the core of this document and then all the background and the ideas and the feeling of it all, it absolutely rings to me with what people are thinking and feeling, and that's absolutely perfect. So I'm confident that with this document we will build the future Shire that the residents want.
Thank you. Councillor Sciano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Look, I completely concur with Councillor Clues. This is the second strategic community plan I've seen in my time on council, and the third which I've had the pleasure of being involved in. And I'm definitely, I'm very happy with the calibre of the plan that's been put to council. And I know that councillors who joined us in 2019 have felt that they're hard to take ownership of potentially the previous plan and the work that had been done previously, and I hope that this plan allows council to unite on what is a bit of a vision for the council that we have today, and potentially that hopefully any new councillors later this year get a warmer welcome and are able to see that vision and allow us to show them that vision as well. And potentially, if we've done a fantastic job, which I think we have, they'll definitely be coming to council knowing a lot of the issues that we've identified in the strategic community plan. But it's, I think it's a very proud moment. These only come around every every so many years, and the format and the plan that we've presented today, and particularly the focus, I think, moving forwards. But yeah, I concur with really what Councillor Clues says, and I hope that council can take ownership of this plan as something that we've worked on together and put together with the community and participated with the community through those workshops and through many of the other consultation activities that occurred through that process. So very proud to see it on the table today, and excited to see what the future holds.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll add my sentiments, and they're along the same lines, that I think it is a very good document. I think what needs to be explained is that this document is the overarching guiding philosophy, if you like, for council. Our corporate business plan, which is we're working on another one, refreshed one at the moment, is going to be the document that shows people the roadmap of where we're going. But this is this document is really the philosophical, if you like, overview of where we want to be in the future. And as Councillor Sciano said, it's been massively informed by the extensive public consultation and community consultation that we went through during the year, and I think even into last year. And it's a very good document. And I think the other thing that needs to be said is people don't realise, people see these documents come out and maybe glance at them, and I commend this one to people to read it. And the other thing people need to know is enormous amount of work went in from the staff, from some of our acting CEOs along the way, and councillors in workshops and discussions and all sorts of things. And a tremendous amount of work went into this one. The first iteration of it, it wasn't any good, really, was it? We had to go back and rework it, and now we've got a terrific result. So I commend it to council. We'll take a vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Uh, 13.2, finalisation of the corporate business plan and alignment with immediate longer-term organisational resourcing and CEO performance criteria. 13.2, do we have a mover? Councillor Sciano, seconded. Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to repeat that title. It is definitely a great one and hopefully a working title. Look, as I've said before, completely supportive of that organisational structural review. Obviously, it is a requirement of us to do anyway. But my belief has always been that on this long journey that we've had to get here to employ a permanent CEO, that this is what a great way to introduce a CEO to an organisation other than to say, we hope that you are here for a long time and that you are able to take this opportunity to structure the organisation in a way that will better the Shire, better councillors, better constituents, the ratepayers, and of course allow you to run an efficient organisation. And so very open to that, and obviously some timelines have been set out by the CEO for November, so we'll obviously see quite a bit the review, complete by November. And also to just endorse the strategic community plan and now allow the CEO to go away and work on the corporate business plan, which will really start to see how those strategic visions can grow into projects and into tangible things in front of us. Obviously great to see Roy be provided a fixed term of arrangement, as well as Samantha, an extension of the fixed term. I obviously asked to endorse those tonight as well.
Sorry, can you just elaborate on Roy and Amanda with titles and names?
Yes, sorry, apologies. Obviously, note the appointment of Roy Grieve as the Acting Director of Infrastructure and Development, and note Samantha Chamberlain as providing an extension as Director of Community and Corporate Services. I think really not much more to say there apart from look forward to seeing what comes from the review when it is completed in November.
The second was Councillor Kitchen.
Oh, I think it's all been said. So,
Councillor Clues.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Scarno. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, exactly right. I will just add, I know, from what I gather from the feelings of the item at 11.1, or I think it was 11.1, that there is an interest to be involved in that process. And one of the things that's worth pointing out is that there is a mention here, or what do you say, not a promise from the CEO, but a commitment, a commitment from the CEO that certainly council workshops will happen. We will be included in the conversation, kept updated. It's really good to hear. Obviously, I'm keen to see how this plays out as well. And of course, if there's any concerns we had when that review comes back to us, we have the chance to vote on it and disagree with it if we don't like it. Not foreshadowing that happening at all. But so I'm happy that it's been done this way as well. I think that it's great. We've got a new CEO. We've been able to bring in a new strategic community plan to work with. He gets to come in with a fresh canvas and a fantastic team behind him to grow and work on. So I'm very happy this is going ahead. This is something we've, as Councillor Scarno said, we've been waiting a while now for this. So very good. The last thing I wanted to touch on, I've completely forgotten. So that'll have to do me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to speak in favour of this motion. I think it's a very good one. In particular, I was very pleased to note points 6 and 7, which Councillor Sciano has already pointed out, the the appointments of Roy Grieve as Acting Director, Infrastructure and Development, and Samantha Chamberlain as Director of Community and Corporate Services. And I'd just like to thank them for the professionalism, the enthusiasm, and the hard work that they have brought to those positions, and the help that they have given us to get to this point. So I think that they are certainly commendable recommendations to take. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. (13.3) Local roads and community infrastructure. Councillor Mogg has declared an interest. Thank you. Yes, so do we have a mover? Councillor Noonan. Seconded Councillor Sciano. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move that the following prospective projects in order of preference be nominated for the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure LRCI Stage 3 program. A. Hasty Road Drainage and Curbing Upgrade. Estimated construction cost of $383,487 plus $32,000 design costs. B. Peppermint Grove Beach Road School Bus Turnaround Upgrade. Estimated construction costs of $120,000 plus $7,200 design costs. And the Capel Regional Equestrian Park, the CREP, building redevelopment, estimated construction cost of $350,000 plus $35,000 in design costs. And 2, allowance of $39,200 in addition to the existing allowance of $35,000 made with regard to the CREP building redevelopment for final designs to bring these projects up to shovel-ready status to be considered in the 2021-22 draft budget.
Councillor, yes, we have a seconder, don't we? So we had a seconder, so you may speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. These are all very worthy projects. So it's great that we were able to have a workshop to talk about them, to discuss them as a council. These are seen as, I think the expression was that these are the cream on top of the cake from the federal government. So to help find projects that otherwise would be further down the list, or things that would not happen in the normal course of events for a number of years, but things that can be brought forward that are not eligible for other funding arrangements, and but things that add to the community infrastructure that are provide a benefit for the community, and that can be delivered in a relatively short term. So these are all excellent programs. We have talked about them, and I commend them to the councillors.
Councillor Sciano, anything to add? No. Anybody else? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Noonan, spot on again. I just wanted to add some background to the Peppermint Grove Beach school bus turnaround upgrade. So we recently heard that the school bus at Peppermint Beach is having to do some sort of 3 or 4 or 10-point turn each day out there just to get the bus turned around. So I don't, if anyone isn't aware of bus driving protocols, it's actually a big no-no to reverse a bus at any time, especially around school kids. So this was a pretty big safety thing, so I'm really happy to see that one in there.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we can have a vote. Those in favour? That's carried, the 7 of us. So we can have Councillor Mogg return. Okay, now we're moving to 14.1, the tender for the Dalyellup Skate Park construction. And I'll move it, and Councillor Sciano has seconded. Yes, so obviously this is going to be, and you know, I'd just like to steal as much of Councillor Sciano's thunder as I can here, so I'll do my best. Obviously this is a long awaited project. Will be welcomed by the people, and especially the young people of Dalyellup. And it's been on the council program for as long as I can remember. And it's great to see it finally coming to fruition. We haven't dragged our feet on this. We've been doing all the things we need to do, the planning, the design component, and working it in with our other plans for the Dalyellup city centre. So great to see we're finally getting to the rubber hitting the road and the wheels hitting the skate park. So I can commend this, and it's a personal favourite project of mine, which anyway, Councillor Cassiano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anyway, I was actually just going to say I've got some experience with Convict, and I've seen some of their work before. I think when I was Youth Advisory Council President, I headed off to Fremantle to do to do some stuff and some training in public spaces, and that was when I first met Convict. They're obviously very experienced in the space of skate parks and precincts and many things. So I just want to say, obviously, in the scheme of the project, I think the President has summed it up pretty well, and obviously commend himself and others for being members of that committee that have been working on that project without me, sadly. But yeah, obviously commend Convict and their experience with this particular project, and hope that councillors support the motion.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. I'd like to move an amendment in line with what was discussed on Monday. I don't have it in front of me because I thought, I've just beaten you to the punch. In regards to seeking corporate sponsorship or naming rights for the 282,000 and a little bit of change differential, $228,845.
So the CEO has suggested that the additional wording should be something like seek additional funding. We need that. Seek additional funding, including but not limited to sponsorship and or naming rights.
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Okay. So for the minute taker, just if you can add before the words that I just gave you, the words the CEO be authorised to seek, and then it says additional grant funding, blah, blah, blah.
Sorry, Councillor Southwell has it written down on a piece of paper.
With permission, can I like to add to the
Okay, so I think we're pretty close to the amendment that's been put there, and rather than go through the process of debating the amendment, I'll accept that as the mover to be added to the motion, and the seconder, Councillor Sciano, has given me an indication that he accepts it to be added and it become the substantive motion. And Councillor Clues, I think, has a question, or he wants to...
I was going to move an amendment, but if you're happy to also let me just add on to it, you may agree.
Well, move an amendment. We'll see if we get a seconder, and then we'll consider it.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to move that any such decision be brought back to council for confirmation. Or
So, do we have a seconder? No. That's... do we have a seconder? We do. Councillor Noonan, we have a seconder. So, as the mover of the motion, I'm not going to accept that change, so it'll have to go to the debate, and so you have to point out your reasons.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think it would be prudent, you know, anyone could offer money. I think it would be prudent that we ensure we're happy with the prospective sponsor before making that agreement.
Councillor Noonan?
I'm happy with that amendment to the additional amendment. I think actually makes a good, Councillor Clues makes a good point.
There's no further discussion. We'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? So that's carried. That becomes part of the substantive motion. Carried 6-2. Councillor Southwell and Scott against. Okay, so is there any further debate on what is now the substantive motion? We'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Uh, 14.2 is a tender for green waste and hard waste verge side collection. A mover? Councillor Mogg, seconded Councillor Andrew. Councillor Mogg, any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll accept the motion as read and no further discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew? Okay, anybody? No, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, 14.3 is the extractive industry development application for lot 230 Elgin Road, Elgin. It's Councillor Clues. I think he wishes to move an alternative motion.
Please. I'd like to move the alternative motion provided by officers earlier this evening.
Okay, well, let's... can you have some assistance to get up on the... So, if anyone understands or knows already what the alternative motion is, do we have a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Okay, so if it's up there now and we're all appraised of it, Councillor Clues, you can speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I think these guys are doing a really good job of putting some science into the depth. So the separation between the...
Sorry, can I just ask these guys?
Sorry,
who are you referring to?
The proponent, sorry. My apologies. The key sort of sticking point on this issue seems to have been the separation to the ground table. And the proponent, I think, has done a really good job of putting some science into what the water table's doing, where it's at, where they're actually safe to dig to. You know, we've got a lot of industry around Capel, especially with the sand mining and whatnot, that regularly dig below the levels, and they do so obviously through the mines department, not through us, but they have very stringent measures in place and have shown that it can work. So I'm happy that the proponent's done the groundwork and is on to this. They're not just saying, hey, we just want to dig a hole and hope for the best. They've actually done some really good work on this. Yeah, I think, you know, and not to mention the fact that the proponent isn't just someone having a management order over the land. The proponent actually owns this land, so if they make a mess, it's their own land, so they have some responsibility that they're going to wish to obviously maintain it in good order. So, you know, and not to mention the requirement to remediate the land once they're done. So I'm really happy with what they've done, and I want to support them to keep this industry going for them.
Councillor Mogg. Anyone else for or against? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start, I'll just foreshadow, though, the actual original officer's recommendation as provided in the agenda on page 60. And would like to speak against this alternative recommendation. While I do understand the information that has been provided in addition since we deferred this item, the 2 metre separation between the top of the water table and the bottom of the pit is essential to maintaining that buffer between any potential issues of contamination and then also what the site might be rehabilitated into. I note the proponent has said that they will perhaps look at fencing off and planting native vegetation. That does need that 2 metre separation from the groundwater table. Native plants are not used to high water level tables in those sorts of areas. That's why they're all up on the ridge line, not down on the bottom where all the water currently is lying. A few other issues are still existent with the proposal. There's the transport means are not clearly identified. Yes, they're saying they're going to use Elgin Road North and single trucks, but I just can't see that being an efficient solution long term. The most efficient measure is to use B doubles, and I know they can apply for an exemption on that, but I have seen it with extractive industries around, particularly on another gravel road we have in the north of Boynup, where you can just keep applying for those exemptions and then just keep running B doubles. There's outstanding noise mitigation issues. Additional information is needed regarding the flora and fauna on site. I've seen that there was some information there that they did survey it one day and night and found that there were western ringtail possums and other native species. So there needs to be more information on that, as well as water runoff plans and water management plans. It's just not there, and until that is there, you know, I mean, I've seen the alternative where we can approve and then hopefully get those things later on, but the 2 metre separation is a major part of it, and because that hasn't been adequately looked at, I'm not willing to allow an exemption on the other items just yet. So I hope councillors would vote against this and turn to the foreshadowed motion that would reject the application, and then they could probably try again later on. Thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will also be supporting this motion. There is currently a great need for sand in the Greater Bunbury region. I believe I'm pleased with the recommended conditions that have been placed on the application by Shire officers. I note that many native plants do need 2 metre separation to the water table to grow. However, there are other native species such as paperbarks which grow in the water. You know, that's their natural habitat. So I also note that on the property there are already deep drainage channels dug on either side down the boundaries of this property. So the water table, in effect, has already been breached in that regard. And one final point that I'd make is that our approval or passing this extractive industry licence here isn't a green light necessarily for the proponent. They've still got to get approval from the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, and if they come back and say that they're not happy with it, it won't go ahead. So I think that approving this application, what it does is it potentially saves us from a a difficult or a challenging challenge in the in SAT, which we really don't need. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't support the alternative motion. For me, the separation from the ground, from the water table, like Councillor Kitchen, is a non-negotiable point for myself. Now, I also cannot agree with Councillor Clues on the comment that the applicant has been willing to work with us on understanding the water table or the groundwater levels, because at last month, in the briefing with the applicant, I asked, can you please supply the water measurements over the drier months, which I was told at the time was going to be the months of operation. And what they've come back with is June and August 2021. So we've deferred this item. I've not really been presented much more usable information on the groundwater, apart from, thankfully, a presentation today, obviously, and some further information. But my questions and reasons for deferral still haven't been answered. The information that I requested at that briefing has not been provided in this report. And not only that, I cannot see in this alternative recommendation, and I have notified councillors, I unfortunately didn't see this until the physical copy this afternoon, and unless there is some restrictions on the actual months of operation, which is something that was flagged by the applicant with us, then I just cannot support it. I cannot support it, and as I said, the 2 metres is non-negotiable for me anyway. But I was genuinely would have considered if I'd seen what the groundwater levels were like in the drier months when the applicant was planning on extracting, as per what had been told to me last month, it could have been a very different picture. But that information isn't in front of me. We deferred this for a month. I was happy to defer it. And here we are. And now I've got an alternative recommendation that I for the life of me, and if someone can point it out to me, doesn't talk about the months of operation. So, councillors, I can't support the alternative recommendation. And I hope that the foreshadowed recommendation is put on the table.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. I also won't be supporting the alternative motion. I would support the original officer's recommendation to deny this application. The 2 metre separation is a non-negotiable for me as well. I also have concerns about when the boards were in place, when they were removed. We heard tonight from Jim from JDA that the peak levels occur in September. That's not the information that we've received. We've received information that the peak water levels are October, November, so I would have doubts surrounding whether or not their peak levels are actually accurate. And you can approve anything, but if it needs almost 3 full pages of conditions, then there's quite a few errors or issues with the application. So I won't be supporting the alternative motion.
Anyone else? No. Well, I'll just say that I think I want to commend the proponent and our planning staff for the diligence they've shown and the work they've done. It's quite apparent, and this is the second time it's come back to council. We've had presentations and we've had some briefings from our staff too. So we've really gone through this issue, and it's become apparent to me that both the staff and the proponents have done a lot of work, a lot of negotiating. They've gone through all the issues. Everybody understands the issues. The staff understand the issues. The proponent very well understands the issues, and now we understand the issues. And it's interesting that people around this table are starting to talk like engineers. One thing I disagree with is that there's a lot of if there is a lot of conditions on it, that should be a comfort to us and shouldn't ring alarm bells that there's errors or anything. Conditions are a sign that we're taking every precaution. I don't believe that means it's a flawed proposal. I think, and the other thing that we need to remember is that the alternative motion that we're now about to vote on was prepared by the officers. So they've prepared both the recommendation that's in the agenda and this one because, you know, and they wanted to give a, if council was going to go with an approval, they want to make it a good one and a safe one. So that's what's in front of us. That shows that the staff are prepared to consider the possibility that this is a reasonable proposal and weighing everything up, including the economic circumstances and the need for supply of the quarry products. This should get an approval. So we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's 4-4, so casting vote I'll use to vote again in favour, and it's passed on the casting vote. Carried, sorry, carried's the word. (15.1) Policy review for electronic mail and internet. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconded. Councillor Sciano. Councillor Mogg, anything?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll accept the motion as read. Thank you.
Councillor Sciano. If there's no discussion, we can put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. 15.2, the financial statements for 30 June 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrews, seconded Councillor Kitchen. Any questions or discussion? No. Okay, well, let's put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 15.3, the accounts paid during the month of July 2021. Mover? Councillor Andrews, seconded Councillor Noonan. Discussion? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 15.4, the adoption of the annual budget and differential rates for 2021-22. Councillor Andrews, mover. Seconded Councillor Noonan. Councillor Andrew. Annual budget. 15.4. I saw your hand. Oh, I saw your hand. You're not the mover. You don't want? Would you like to move or not? You'd not like to move. Okay. In that case, I'll move it, and Councillor Noonan can second it. I don't have anything at this stage. I'll save anything for rebuttal if anything comes up. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to commend the officer's recommendation to the councillors. We've been through this fairly exhaustively. We've talked about it. We've had the feedback from the community. We've responded to that community feedback in returning the second year of 0% rate rise, no rate rise. I think it's one of the obviously this has been done in relation to the second year of COVID. I think we can see that the COVID problem is still apparent, and it's very apparent. It's become very apparent to us in the discussions that we've had, the workshops that we've had over the last few weeks, that it's still very much an issue for residents in the Shire of Capel, and this can be seen in such figures as the level of defaults that we have on current council rates, which is more than double where it was at this time in previous years. So that's a good indication that people are finding things hard still. Okay, there might be some industries like construction which are booming, but there are still a lot of industries, a lot of people who are finding things hard, and so I think that we made a good decision when we made that recommendation to stay at 0. And so I would commend this motion to the council, mindful as well that to make any amendments or alterations at this stage would put a great deal of pressure on our staff and make it very difficult to meet ministerial requirements, reporting requirements.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be supporting the recommendation tonight, but I can't let it go past without saying a few things. Yes, COVID has had another big impact on our year, but it's not an excuse forever. Things have moved forward, costs have still gone up in every other area. You've just got to look at our street lighting budget, which is up $80,000 compared to last year. And that's just street lighting. There's commodities, which have gone up 60% in some areas. I'm not saying that putting rates up every year is a prudent move, it's certainly not, but a local government has to meet its demands and its resource requirements. And later on we'll be considering a budget with a deficit of about $450,000. With that to be made up out of our reserve accounts. And yes, our reserves are there to help us along the way or pay for that capital work that's been there for a while, but there's certainly not a means of funding operational expenditure. And that's something that we will have to realise, specifically with the Dalryallup specified area rate, which currently sits at about $800,000 a year. By this time next year, there'll be close to about $1 million worth of parks and asset in that area that will need to be maintained. But with the specified area rate staying at the same as it is, that reserve for that area will be completely depleted by this time next year, meaning that the full amount will have to come out of general revenue, not 50-50 as it currently stands. So in order to fix that, that will mean quite a substantial jump just on that specified area rate if that is the only means of fixing it. Otherwise, it does mean taking some things out. It means we might have to turn some sprinklers off or stop mowing some lawns. That might be the one solution. But those are the sort of challenges that we'll be facing, not in a couple of years' time, next year. Next year, we'll sit around this table and we'll have to decide, right, what are we going to do? We're going to whack people with near on probably a $100 increase just in that one area if things stay the same, or what do we stop doing? So when it comes to rate, we have a big job between now and next year with talking with the community saying, right, it's got down to the bare bones. So what do you want? What don't you want? And I know that I can, be dismissed as just being that person who says the sky's falling down. Well, it's not that, because when a structure fails, which is what this is getting towards, it all starts at one point, and that's a decision. This is that decision-making point. We can decide now, right, we can fix this over a couple of years with steady increases or steady cutbacks in other areas, or we get to the point where we just have to go whack or stop doing it. I prefer a sensible, stable approach rather than anything drastic on the other side. So between now and next year, we have some tough decisions to make, but if I have the privilege of sitting on this table after October, I'm more than up to that challenge, and I hope everyone else who sits around this table is as well, because that's the reality we'll be faced with. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Question, are we dealing with just recommendation 1 or the whole lot together?
The whole lot together.
Whole lot together. Right. With that said, thank Christ that I won't be around this table next year when the budget's got to be drawn up. Because there's people out there now that are banging my ears and banging their gums saying, what the hell are you trying to do to the Shire of Capel? I haven't got an answer to it. But I do tell them, wait till next year and see how smart the councillors sitting around a table now are. Because I know what's going to happen next year to cover costs and cover our asses so we can still work as a local government without going bankrupt.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against?
Thank you. Yes, sorry.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I was of the understanding we were only dealing with Recce number 1 as well, so that being the case... What's too late? Yeah, so I'll move an amendment then, please, to... I've actually lost the damn page I was on. Budget. So I was waiting until we got to it. 4, 3, rates concession. Here it is. I'd like to move an amendment to remove officer recommendation number 4.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? That amendment lapses due to the lack of a seconder. So we go back to the motion, and does anyone else wish to speak for or against? Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm greatly saddened I couldn't attend the special meeting earlier this month because I would have loved to have had this discussion before it came to this late in the piece, and I do respect and understand that if this isn't endorsed how it's written today, that we won't be able to endorse a budget until September, and I understand and respect that, and I understand there are also mechanisms in place so that we are able to request extension of adopting period to adopt a budget. And I believe the department or the minister is aware that potentially that could be something that occurs. I have to concur with Councillor Kitchen completely, apart from one thing. I will not endorse the officer's recommendation as written with 0% rate increase. And you know, we've just gone past the green waste collection. We're looking at running a deficit of 200,000 plus, and you think, well, there you go, there's your cost saving, right? A service cut from the community that I use for the first time, I have to say.
Councillor Sciano, sorry, I've got to interrupt you there. It's sort of, I'm not sure it's a point of order, but there has been a council decision made in relation to the rate setting, which I think you're aware of, and it's incumbent on councillors to support decisions of council. And you seem to be at the moment venturing into an area of open criticism of a recent decision of council. So, if you wish to withdraw and to cease and desist, that's one thing. If you don't, then I'll have to adjourn and I'll seek some advice on which provisions and which regulations you're contravening. What would it be?
I would be happy to keep my remarks to the exact item that's being discussed today, which is the endorsement of their item.
So you can endorse, you can talk about this item, but once you stray into criticism of a previous council decision, I'm going to have to take some sort of action. Okay?
Sure, of course. So looking at officer's recommendation 1, as I said, I'm not able to support that item. I believe, and as I said, there are obviously cost savings that we can find. What we have been asked to endorse tonight is a budget with a deficit of 200,000 plus, and the idea of the side verge was just obviously an example of things that you can do and how it affects service delivery. But what I'd like to say is that doesn't solve the issue, because we still have an unsustainable sustainability ratio. And with 0%, we're not able to move forward on that. We're not able to improve. We're not able to better, actually, what we already do now, let alone deliver additional services and facilities. So I feel a little bit threatened, I have to say, with potentially the point of order. And I don't feel that I really want to put my neck out on this. Councillors in the community are very clear of how I sit on these particular issues. So I'm just not going to continue. Thank you.
Okay, can I just clarify that remark you made about feeling threatened by somebody or something, or what sort of statement are you making there?
I don't believe I have to provide a personal explanation.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm a bit surprised, I guess. It's funny the things that we're hearing spoken about and the things that we're not. You know, we were recently passed a graph that I found very interesting just last week or the other day that it actually showed the total budget income for the Shire since 2014-15, I think it was, or something like that. It showed the huge spike that was there from, I believe it was 15-16, when there was a massive rate increase that aligned with a GRV increase, which ended up as a bit of a double dip. And then from there, the line actually went down. And it went down for the next 2 or 3 years despite rate increases. So it just really shows there are many sources of income from the Shire, and I hope we can do a good job of looking at where those sources went and clawing back some of them. On top of that, we know we just recently saw an item to save us $100,000 a year on some parks and gardens. We've spoken about it last month. That's the only one in 2 years I've seen of its sort. I'd like to see more of those. That'd be great. Next thing, rates. So we want to put the rates. Some people seem to have a mind to put the rates up as a requirement, as a means of growing the budget, because that's what it's all about. It's about getting that budget up so we can have more nice stuff. So we've actually, in the last 12 months, had an extraordinary boost of rate payers pushing up the budget. So yes, we're talking about a 0% rate increase. We are not talking about not having any money. Nothing has been passed to us, nothing has come across our desk that has threatened anything. There's been no threat of losing a single thing. We've got good plans in place for everything, and we'll continue to do so with our new CEO and with our strategic community plan to make sure when we move forward and the day we do put rates up, it's for a good reason. And I'm sure it will come. But right now, we're not there yet. We're going to get more money through the building of houses. And another thing, so I hear, growth costs money. This is akin to the argument of refusing to do overtime because you're going to have to pay more tax. If there's more ratepayers, there's more money coming in. It's that simple. Yes, some of that money that's coming in is increasing a slight cost, but nowhere near the total of the extra that's coming in. It's just absolutely nonsense. It's a silly argument. So I think this is great. This is fantastic. We'll hopefully continue to see the growth in ratepayers. We'll continue to see more houses going up. We'll continue to see growth, and we will continue to see the budget increasing even with the 0% rate increase.
Thank you. Anyone else for or against? I'll sum up then, and just want to go to a couple of things. A couple of points Councillor Kitchen made. He said that the Dalyellup special area rate, all those parks and things will have to be maintained, and we may have to stop watering lawns. And as I mentioned during the debate on what our rates should be, I said it's time to consider think laterally rather than just keep on going. We've got this amount of lawns that were inherited by us from Sadlerley. We have to keep watering them every year, year in, year out, no matter what. I think there's another way. I think you can look at what other things can we put in those parks that aren't as expensive to maintain as vast tracts of lawn. I mean, vast tracts of lawn, let's talk about, and Councillor Kitchen, you're on the Climate Change Committee, you should understand that vast tracts of lawn are no longer sustainable now in this in our climate change era when we're trying to save resources. So let's look at different things. I mean, have we ever asked the people of Dalyellup, we've never gone to them with the question, right, these parks are great, you love all these parks, are you prepared to pay ever-increasing amounts to keep them, or would you be satisfied with maybe a few less parks or a bit less grass or some more natives in there or something? there's more than one way to skin a cat than to say we have to keep hitting up people for more and more money every year because our costs are going up, or their costs are going up as well. And I'm sure, you know, as I said once before in a budget debate, a rate debate or a budget debate, the definition of unsustainable is to increase rates every year in excess of the rate of inflation. It's a definition of unsustainable, because eventually you'll get to a figure people just can't pay anymore. And the poor old people who rent houses, they don't realise they're paying the rates. They just think that's the rent of my house, but their rents are going up when rates are going up, because they pay all the landlord's costs. So I think we made a very good decision. The council made a very good decision previously on the rates, and I'm surprised to hear councillors coming here and criticising decisions of council not long after they've been made and trying to shoot them down. I think that's a bit appalling, and also to have a veiled criticism that I might be threatening somebody when I'm exercising my role as the presiding officer, I think is also outrageous. Anyway, let's put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 6-2. Thank you. My voice was getting up, so I felt I didn't need it anymore. So, the new business of an urgent nature is item 16.1. Do I have a mover? No. Oh, we do. Councillor Cluse. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I think I'm not going to explain the whole thing, but I think this request lines up well with our policy on moving the main bore route to Centenary Drive. I know we've played a pretty straight bat on every item that has come from Main Roads and been returned the same favour by Main Roads, but on this one it actually lines up perfectly, I think, with what we want to do anyway, and what we think is a better option. But I would like to move an amendment, if and when you're ready.
Sorry.
I'll move an amendment, please.
Okay, just a moment. I'm just having some consultation with the CEO. Excuse me. Councillor Cluse, you're the original mover of the motion. Yeah. So, seconder was? Councillor Kitchen, yes. Okay, so, have you concluded your remarks? Okay, so, well, in any case, I wish to move an amendment. Yeah, with the permission of the mover and the seconder. Yeah. So I'm the permission of the mover and seconder that we add point 1, that the existing officer recommendation becomes point 2, and point 1 reads, Council reiterates its previously stated position on the route of the southern portion of the bore. And I already have I'm just seeking the permission of the mover and seconder as a way around that. So permission of the mover, permission of the seconder. No. Okay, so it has to be moved as amendment. So I've moved it as amendment, seconded Councillor Noonan. I'll explain the reason for the amendment. So the council has talked about this at our agenda forum, and we agreed that there could be some advantages in it for the community, for our community, in consenting to this request from Main Roads to cede this land which we have a management order over. So what's before us tonight is to consent to that, but I just think that because it's probably the first time, if this motion passes, the first time that this council has indicated any sort of support for ancillary developments associated with the Main Roads preferred route of the bore in the southern section. So it'd just be prudent for us to restate our position in the same motion so that nobody gets the wrong idea. That's the reason for the amendment. Councillor Noonan, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just as you say, I think it's important for us to reiterate that position, but I'd also like to comment that it's that this makes a lot of sense. This request from Main Roads, it's something that we would support, I think, in any case, because it provides an opportunity to provide another access for people from the northern end of Jullorp out onto the bore.
Councillor Noonan, I don't think that's debating my amendment. That's more debating the substantive
Original,
motion,
yeah.
if it becomes a substantive motion. So
Yeah,
you
so
happy
I'd
with
just-
the amendment?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let's put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Oh, hang on. Before we do that, I'd like to clarify, it should say, Council reiterates its previous stated position on the proposed southern route of the bore. Okay, so that's it, and we're putting it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 5-3, and the voters against were Councillors Kitchen, Sciano and Scott. So that becomes a substantive motion. I think, Councillor Clues, would you like to speak on the substantive motion? You showed an inclination to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this is ceding part or control of a section of land which is the park right at the northern end of Jullorp on Sleaford Avenue. At the moment, a section of that park is required to build a roundabout which will then provide access through to the Centenary Road link from the bore. It also, by finalising this and then allowing Main Roads to move ahead with that part, it doesn't in any way affect the southern section of the bore where Main Roads is preparing to put it over or between the quarries and through the corridor. It provides an access, egress for people from the northern end of Jullorp. It also enables us to make use or further the money that has been proposed by the member for Bunbury to upgrade that park, which I think people at that northern end of Jullorp would certainly welcome. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the motion? If not, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried 6-2. Voting against was Councillor Kitchen, Councillor Scott. So that's carried. We have any new business of an urgent nature? 16.1. Oh, we did it. Yeah, we did it. We got through that. Sorry, my mistake. Second public question time. Motions without notice. Any motions without notice? None. We have one notice of motion for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of council, and that is Councillor Noonan has indicated he will be moving a motion at the next ordinary meeting of council to establish an within council, a committee, Economic Development and Grants Evaluation Committee. Are there any items for consideration behind closed doors? None. That being the case, I will close the meeting at 7:55 p.m. Thank you.
Sorry, I would usually stay to dinner, Gordon, but I have got to rush.